Classical musicians are often accused of being snobs, of thinking all other musical genres are garbage.
Yay!
As a classical musician myself, with multiple degrees of musical snobbiness, I figured I'd make a video and tell you for myself which styles I think are pretty good and which genres actually are garbage. I think a great place to start would be just classic rock. We will get into some derivatives of rock here in a little bit, but just classic rock I actually think is pretty good. We're talking the good old days, before I was born, where just the rock was pure. You didn't throw all this extra garbage into it. It was just rock and roll. We just get the distortion on. We just knock your face off a little bit and have a good time. Up next, we're going to rank alternative rock, which if you don't already know what alternative rock is, it's kind of a difficult term to describe, but you can think of it as like newer rock as a simple explanation. Rock since maybe the last 20, 30 years or something. I like it more if I hear one more alternative rock song, maybe like Nirvana. I might like it a little more than classic rock, but it might get a little old a little quicker too. So we're going to put it in fine. It's not a bad ranking. It's just fine. Okay, up next, the tier list has Avant-garde. And this is like the dumbest thing to rank. I wonder if they mean modern avant-garde music, but all I can think of is like the old stuff from like the 40s and 50s, or if you don't know 40s and 50s avant-garde music, you got to give it a listen. They did some weird stuff back then. It does get a few points for creativity, and sometimes it is funny when you first hear the sounds, like what's being created, but overall it's pretty meh for me. I mean, what normally happens is typical avant-garde piece is like 5-10 minutes long, sometimes like 40, right? Like the first 30 seconds, you're like, this is really creative. Then after a while, you're like, okay.
Round and around and around.
Up next here, we have blues. Now this list actually has blues and it has jazz and it has R&B all listed separately. And the way this works, there's actually a couple different of these problems on the list, is if you think there's a difference between blues and jazz, there clearly is a difference in your brain. That's great. Some people are like, there's no difference. Blues is like a feature. Blues is something that happens in jazz music. If you're in that camp, whatever, just ignore this part of it. But I like, if someone's like, I'm listening to some blues, I like it pretty well. It does get old quickly. So I'm going to put it in the fine category. Oh, but maybe it's pretty good. I'm going to put it in pretty good. I do enjoy the times I listen to it. So we're going to upgrade to pretty good. All right. Up next, we have classical music, which I think I have to put into great, because if I didn't, a lot of you might unsubscribe right now. No, obviously I think classical music is great. That's why I do this. Up next is country music.
And a little bit of chicken fried.
If I'm just judging country music by the pure bare bones of what it is, it's pretty similar. It's kind of between alternative and classic rock for me. But the twang, man, the twang in their voice and the twang in their instruments. Oh, it's not my favorite thing. Oh, I might even put it in garbage. You know what? Avant-garde's going down the garbage too. They're both garbage. Here's the thing. Bluegrass is not a genre on this list. Specifically bluegrass, which I know is like, for some people, isn't that the same thing? It's not. Bluegrass is often really fun. Just country where someone's singing about their breakup and the bar and their blue jeans and their boots and driving home on their pickup truck on the cornfield, like, especially when they talk like this. Man, that ain't good. Okay, this is not the only electronic dance style on this list, but up next we have disco. And I don't really like disco. You're talking like straight classic disco. I'm not a big fan, so disco is just going to be meh. Up next here we have EDM, which EDM, if you don't know what that means, stands for electronic dance music, which electronic dance music is sort of a big umbrella term for tons and tons and tons of different electronic dance music styles. However, it's sort of like in classical music, we say classical music, but we can have the Baroque era. We have the Romantic era. And then within the classical music world, we also have the classical era. So think about EDM kind of that way. Yes, in a sense, it encompasses a lot of styles, but there's also like EDM, what was really popular 8, 10, 12 years ago. And I'm going to rank it based off of that style of music. With that being said, I might shock a lot of you because I actually really like this style. I'm going to put it above classic rock and blues. And ironically, because of the way alphabetical order works, up next here we have the opposite of EDM, folk music. Folk music, folk instruments, not a bunch of crummy electronic sounds, but just when things are pure, singing about maybe your homeland or your childhood, or maybe wanting peace for all nations, just simple folk music. I'm going to put folk music in fine, mostly because there's some I really like, and there's some that I don't. I don't like the tradition of all folk music having to be so underproduced and unpolished, if you know what I mean. It's kind of like you expect when you get a folk album, it's not to sound very good and be like, well, it's just kind of the style that, you know, we're singing out a tune and we didn't tune our guitar first. And maybe that is just a style, but I'd be fine to be a little more put together. But yeah, folk music is pretty good. I enjoy it. Up next here, we have funk music. And I actually don't hate funk music. I think it's pretty fun. This might be one that some classical musicians are like, meh, or garbage. But I think it can be enjoyable. And much like alternative rock, which is also in my middle tier, it's something I can enjoy as long as I hear it fairly spaced out in like small doses. I don't want to hear tons of funk music. But whenever I hear something funk style, I'm like, or maybe like a rock band that has kind of a funk style guitarist, I'm like, oh, that's fun. Again, don't listen to it all day, but it's fun. Okay, up next we have heavy metal. And this is probably the biggest shocker on the list because I actually think heavy metal is really good. I lied. It's garbage. Sorry. If you're into heavy metal music, I didn't mean to do you dirty like that. Like, it's just too repetitive for me. Like, often the screaming, it doesn't bother me the fact that they're screaming. It's that it just feels so repetitive after a while. And the like after a while, I'm just like, okay, like when's it going to end? So heavy metal is really not my thing. It's going to go right by country music down there in the garbage tier. Okay, up next we have jazz. And I kind of mentioned earlier that jazz and blues, some people have a very clear distinction, and some people will go to their grave and say there's no distinction between the two. They're like intertwined. Since they are listed here separately, I'm going to think of jazz as maybe a little more of classical jazz, since that is a very huge genre. Like if you go to a college to study classical music, there'll be two very big kind of groups of people. There'll be people who are there studying Bach, Beethoven, Brahms. And there are the people who are studying like jazz, because technically speaking, that style can be extremely hard to play. But with that spin on jazz, I'm going to put it in meh. Not that I hate it. That would be garbage if I hated it, but it's fine. Okay, up next we have pop music, which in a sense, many of these are popular music styles. Lots of these genres are. But pop music, when people say, oh, they're a pop artist, it definitely has a particular flair. It's almost impossible to rank though because it's so wide ranging. I'm just going to say fine, just because there are examples of just mainstream, #1 hits in the country that are just pop songs. I think they're great. And there are plenty of examples that are garbage, but just literally hundreds of pop songs that I like at the same time. So it's kind of hard to rank. We're just going to say it's fine. Okay, up next we have punk rock. So our history kind of with rock here is we have classic rock up here and pretty good. Alternative rock is slightly below, not much below, but just slightly below. And punk rock would be another step in the wrong direction for me. Like if you want to take rock and make it just a little worse, we make it punk rock. Up next, we have R&B. And R&B is actually a pretty big style. And in particular, because this list doesn't actually have a soul style, like a genre of just soul music, I'm kind of putting these things together. And I like it. I want to say it's fine. I could almost say pretty good, but it's fine. It's kind of in that center category. Okay, now for the moment many of you have been waiting for, we have rap music. And since this list only has rap, it doesn't have rap and hip hop. We don't have to go into a whole discussion about how they could be different things, or there could be a culture and one could be a musical style. We just have rap, hip hop, all as one big category here. So if I'm ranking just pure, sharp rap, like dry rap from like the 90s. It's close to garbage for me. I'm talking about no melody, pretty much just a drum beat and someone rapping over it. Now, here's the thing. I actually had this conversation a lot with my little brother about rap because he's really into the pop music scene. And I'm like, every time I hear a rap song that I really like, I'm like, well, that's a rap song that I think is pretty good. The people who are really into rap music, like, rejected that song because it was a little too tuneful. Maybe it had like a really big chorus that like the focus was the chorus and they rapped a little bit on the verse. And often the real true rap fans are like, well, that's not really rap music. So if you're talking just more dry rap music with like that without melodies, it's pretty low. But if we're including the kind of rap where maybe they have a few more melodies when they rap, or maybe they return to some like choruses once in a while, we might move it up to like the next tier. So I'm kind of averaging out the two styles. All right, up next here we have reggae, which basically just means Bob Marley to a lot of us, but I know there are probably more reggae artists. I like it pretty well. I'm going to put it right here in the middle in the fine tier. I'm realizing right now that I was a little harsher than I thought. I think my fear was that almost all the genres would end up in pretty good. And I've kind of made fine more my average. I could definitely see bumping up a few things. I don't like reggae enough for it to go into the pretty good tier and be above alternative rock and be above pop and be above R&B. But it's a lot of fun to listen to. I'm imagining lots of you listening to this video have no clue who Bob Marley is or don't know anything about reggae music because it's never really been that popular in my lifetime or really anyone younger than me lifetime. So I would just say if you don't, it's a lot of fun. It's a pretty chill, fun vibe. So go listen to some reggae after the end of this video. And up next here, we have techno music, which you could say techno and EDM are kind of similar-ish. However, I'm thinking of EDM as like specifically what was kind of popular Avicii era of music. So I want to put techno down here in meh. Techno's fine. I definitely don't not like it. I don't think it's garbage, but it seems to get old really quick. Like you get in 30 seconds into a techno song, you're like, oh, that's cool. It has a really fun vibe. And then you're just like, it's still cool and doing the same vibe. And it's still cool and doing the same vibe. So I get sick of techno a little quicker than most other styles. Man, I kind of want to film this tier list to prove that us classical musicians are not snobs. I'm realizing by my list, I only put 2 things in the great tier, 2 things in pretty good. A lot of things are fine. Many things are meh. Some things are garbage. So maybe we are snobs. After doing the whole thing and kind of seeing what all the genres are available, I could definitely see moving up pop music one category to pretty good, just because there are a lot of just pop songs I really, really, really do like. But I'm pretty happy with everything ended up. So let me know which musical styles are your favorite. I'm guessing lots of you are going to say classical because this is a classical music channel. If you're new here, hi, welcome in. I talk about classical music, how to play piano better, lots of classical music kind of topics. So probably lots of us love classical music. So maybe even the better thing to do, go down to the comments and let me know which musical styles you hate the most. That might be more fun. Thanks for watching. See you guys in the next video.